Hey there, everybody. Thanks for joining me for another one-man review. Today I'll be taking a look at Rayco Pulido's Ghostwriter, a book from Fantagraphics. This is an interesting book. It's really beautifully illustrated and got like a good little mystery to it, even though you don't necessarily know you're involved in a mystery story at first, which is pretty cool. So you get this like really nice high contrast black and white art, really well composed. It reminds me a bit of like Eduardo Hizo, but more cartoony. Something about it though has his vibe. I think like the clean line and the placements of black and everything. It just feels like an extension of Jose Munoz and Eduardo Hizo and that kind of vein. But then you'll have some cartooning more like this. So I think that's really really nice. Here we are introduced to the main character of the book, whose name is Donna Eulela, and some people also call her Donna Leia. I think it's the same character throughout. It was a little hard to pick up on that. It seems like she's using different names with different people, but you see that this is a black comedy in 18 acts, and you see here pretty early on the reveal that she's not pregnant. She's just pretending to be pregnant for some means that's unclear yet. But you could see just the compositional skills and the cartooning chops of the artist here. So this is really, really good stuff. Here we're introduced to a detective, Mauricio, who's a hypnotist, and Donna Eulela, Leia, whichever one of the two she is at the time, she comes to him to help her find her supposedly missing husband, Don Alfonso, and he wants to hypnotize her. The detective here says, well, I'd have to hypnotize you because that's the easiest way to get results, and she's very resistant to that, obviously because she's pulling a scam. She's not really pregnant, so she doesn't want to give that away. So he has to go about his detective work, which is the majority of the book, is him trying to find Don Alfonso, while Donna Eulela kind of gets up to whatever she's getting up to, and he has to use traditional means. There's also a sub-story where the kid next door to her, Pablo, is basically living in a household where the mother's being abused, so she's oftentimes taking care of this Pablo kid in her apartment while things are going not so well next door, and you can see his mother here. And here you could see that the character refers to his as Leia. You also find out that Leia, Donna Eulela, is secretly writing as a ghostwriter. That's why this is called Ghostwriter, for a love column advice strip. And that advice strip has a very traditionalist, almost religious view, where she's being asked to use the strip to convince wives to remain subservient wives to their husbands. Like, that's the advice she's supposed to give. And as a like young feminist woman, what it seems like is she's really tempted to give them bad advice, like screw your husband, don't put up with that. And you start to get a sense that like she's a little bit unhinged. You know what she's supposed to be writing, and then you'll see some of these letters here, like once in the bathtub, slashes veins with his own shaving razor. It won't feel as liberating as smashing his skull in, but it will look like a suicide. Think of your children. And you see some sketches on here where she's like drawing, a woman murdering somebody. So you start to get a sense that she's she's not who she's saying she is, because she uses different names and she's lying about being pregnant. B, she kind of has this dark side to her that you're exploring, and eventually you find out that indeed she is like basically a Black Widow character, going around and killing these men and taking their rings, and she has a collection of rings. So she's like working as this advice columnist, and the way that she's dealing with it, it seems like the story's a little bit obscure. There's not all the links filled in. You have to fill in some of the links yourself, but that seems like what's going on there. And you can see she has a big scar on her stomach that there's kind of some hints about how that happened, but nothing's laid out totally explicitly. Like, you kind of have to fill in some of your gaps yourself, and I think that's cool. And then you basically get the detective finally find Don Alfonso, and you get his side of the story. She's obviously sent multiple detectives after him, and he says, every time one of you finds me, I have to change my identity and move further from downtown. Don't think you're the first private eye to find me. Layla keeps me completely under her thumb. So you start to see that like the whole thing is unraveling. And then there's some extra revelations I don't need to get into related to that. You see that she continues to kill men and continues to like leave little notes and play a little game. And then, you know, that gets wrapped up with the detective in the end. And you wind up back where you started with this guy Carlos in the shop opening, listening to this radio show that she's writing the answers for the letters to. So that's how you come into the book, and that's how you exit the book, is that there's a radio show with a host named Elena, and she gives this kind of overly Christian advice to people, and that's mostly ghostwritten by the Donna Ulela character. Here, oh, actually, there's an epilogue in there. I didn't read that. So I don't know. There might be some content I'm missing out on. And then there's a little sketchbook in the back. But that's pretty much what the story is it's this like story about a female serial killer, which looks like it might actually so this epilogue here explains that this is not, it doesn't look like there was actually a serial killer related to a show, but there was a show from 1947 to 1982 in every Spanish household called El Consulatorio de Elena Francis. So Donna Elena was a matriarch with a wise voice and a soothing tone who would read letters from 7 listeners and offer advice on a variety of topics, including health, housekeeping, fashion, blah, blah, blah. So the radio show that's in here is something that the Spanish audience would have really known, and then he constructed this story around it, which is a cool conceit that you're using real world stuff. Also says that there was a staff of people who would answer every letter that came in to the show, and that while emptying out an old country house that had belonged to the owner of the Institut de Belleza Francis, workers found hundreds of boxes, all letters received at the show. Cataloging them revealed the true nature of post-war Spanish society: poverty, violence, illiteracy, superstition, male chauvinism, repression, hunger, and fear. In the afternoons, Donna Ulela would answer a few censor-selected letters. This was questionably a clever use of mass media in the Franco regime. So that's actually makes it really interesting. I wish I would have read that after reading the end of the book. But that's cool. It takes this like standard thing and ties it to a fictional setting, something that the audience would probably be really familiar with culturally. So really interesting book. Love the cartooning throughout. Love the use of like red all of a sudden out of nowhere about halfway through the book. I think that like upped the intensity of the story for me. And it just unfolded in a really interesting way. I wasn't sure exactly what was going on for a while, and it was a fun mystery book. I quite enjoy it. Great cartooning. I'll definitely be interested in anything else that Rayco Pulido has put out that gets translated, because he's a very powerful cartoonist. If you enjoy what we're doing here on the channel and you want to support us, there's 2 ways to do that. The first way is through our Patreon. At the Patreon, we have 2 different tiers of engagement. The first one gets you early access to our videos. At the second tier, there's a lot of kind of exclusive participation and exclusive access to art and things like that. Any of the money that we make from that just goes back into buying the books that we review, so we really appreciate that. That just helps us put some money back in the community and keep you exposed to cool books. If you want to support Living the Line itself, the best thing to do is support what Sean's doing with Living the Line Publishing. So we'll go ahead and take a look at one of his books now. The Exile by Eric Creek is a gorgeously illustrated Viking saga of revenge. Eric Creek calls it his Viking Western. It's about a guy who's been away on the warpath and is returning home to some family troubles that have to be resolved. And this is told in just this amazing, like, kind of 3-color art style that looks like old woodblock cuts or something. It's absolutely gorgeous book that you've got to pick up. Thanks for following along. Take it away, Jack.